focusing in on how to do music well in a small church. And so our host tonight, as you can see on the screen, is Rich Clegg, who is the regional coordinator for New Hampshire, but he's also the lead pastor at FaithBridge Church in Manchester, New Hampshire. And welcome in, Rich. Glad you're here. And I am going to let you take over, and you are going to introduce your special guest, and I'll be in the background if you need anything, and I'm going to monitor the chat. So be sure to check out the chat, everybody who's watching, because we certainly, again, want to hear from you. Carry on, Rich.
Great. So, well, good evening, everyone. I am Rich Clegg, and my good friend and associate pastor here at FaithBridge, Matt Hasty. We met in seminary back in the day. We met through a small group at our church and felt called to come to New Hampshire together to plant a church. And so we came up in 2005. We shared a moving truck and have been serving together since then. So, yeah, Matt has served as associate pastor of worship and youth and small groups, and as in many times in a small church, pretty much everything else. And so appreciate him. So have him share a bit about himself in a minute, but 2 degrees in music, and has served in a teaching role from kindergarten all the way up to the collegiate level. So a vast array of experience, and has been leading music in the local church for over 20 years. So, Matt, why don't you share a little bit about your background in music? And then I got a few questions for you.
Okay, my background in music, I began playing the piano about age 7, and have been playing in church since age 8, in one way, shape, or other. And I became involved in the church and playing on a regular basis in high school. God called me to the ministry when I was 13. It was going to be ministry with music somehow, and I didn't know what that looked like. And over my course of my teen years, God showed me what that was going to be, and called me to assist a church planter while I was at college, and began looking for seminary, and now I'm up here.
Yeah. So family, kids?
Yes, I have my wonderful wife who's also heavily involved in our music program. She's a music teacher as well, and we have 4 teens. And 3 of them are involved in the music with our church, 2 on stage, and I'm 1 in the sound booth.
Yeah, and for those that missed it, 14. So you definitely know how to be praying for Matt. So as we think about music, a lot of times we want to just do and do things, but I found in any ministry and anything significant in life, knowing the purpose behind it, it is important. And if you don't know what your purpose is, what you do can sometimes be a mess. So in your mind, what's the purpose of congregational music?
Really, there's 2 main purposes. One is to worship God, like a physical expression of your honor and love to God. And the other is the purpose of music in a congregation is education of the congregation. I like to put it this way, like music, I'm going to read a lot of my stuff, so because I have lots of notes here. Music has a way of sticking in your head like nothing else. Like I can't remember sermons from my childhood, but I can remember all the words to the very first song I sang in preschool choir, which was "Do Lord."
You want to sing it now for us?
Do Lord, oh do remember me. Like it's a little kid. So I mean, so music has the power to stick in your brain, and so because of that, you got to pay careful attention to what songs you put in there. What does the theology of the song say? Does it match the theology of your church? Because a lot of popular songs today are written by folks who really come from churches that are theologically different. And so you've got to look at the song and say, okay, what does this say? Does it work? Is the song worthy of living in the brain of all of my congregants throughout the whole week? Because they're going to be repeating it, so they should be repeating something that's true. There's a need to evaluate each word. Sometimes I have to change words to my songs. Example of that would be there's a song that I really liked, but one of the verses read, "Speak, say the name of Berlin, and say the name above all names over every broken place." And to me, that was confusing because I don't see Jesus's name as a magic word. So I just altered that one line, and then it fit. And it can be subjective. If you don't know, if you're worried about something else, then you can always ask your senior pastor, who would be more than happy to help you make sure something is theologically accurate if you don't know. Always good to have a good relationship there with your senior pastor. So sometimes you can alter a verse to make it acceptable. If it's the chorus, then you probably need to pick another song. Like if it's the title of the song, but you always change that, then there comes the point where you can change so much of it that you really aren't really supposed to legally sing it. So that's a gray area. But if you change too much of it, you're kind of completely rewriting the song. So don't do it. So, and then the other thing you need to look at with this is the message of the song understandable? So not only make sure it theologically fits what you do, but then can folks in your congregation understanding the song? So you got to pay attention to who's in your congregation when you choose that. This is in this purpose of congregational music, because if you got a church of people that have been in church their whole lives and they have a lot of biblical knowledge, then there's more options available to you in the songs that you pick. But if you have a lot of people that are new to the faith and don't have a lot of biblical knowledge or experience reading the Bible, then you've got to really evaluate all the songs and ask yourself, can they understand the song and worship with that? Based on what it is. Some examples of this one, and it's a cool song. It has a great tune. It's fun to sing, but the song Days of Elijah is a great example of this. If you got folks that are new in the faith, they aren't going to know why you're singing about dry bones, who Elijah is. They might have heard of Moses before. They're not going to know what a year of Jubilee is, and they won't understand why you're singing about revival, even if they know what the word means. So, nearly all of that song is difficult to comprehend if you're brand new to the faith. Another example would be the hymn "A Mighty Fortress," and I love hymns. I try to do hymns here at FaithBridge, but and if I've got a congregation that has grown up singing hymns and has a knowledge of that biblical knowledge, you can do it. It's not a problem. But if you've got people that are new to the faith, then they're going to have difficulty with some of those difficult archaic phrases because the song was written by Martin Luther and it's old, and it'd be like trying to read and understand Shakespeare if you've never read that before. So for me, the purpose of congregational music is to worship God and then to educate the congregation in a way that sticks with them, kind of singing their sermon that gets stuck in there.
So you kind of had this purpose behind how you, your view of congregational music. How do you approach music ministry? I mean, do we go out and hire a bunch of paid musicians from the music school down the street, or what's your approach to the music ministry?
For me, approach to the music ministry is working with who you've got. Who do you have in your church that can do that? If you don't have anybody, then that's another conversation. Maybe you play a video. Maybe you look to see if you can bring someone in that you can help disciple and lead through that. There's many options, but for me, it was in the early days, it was me with the piano, and then we gradually added some more people. Oh, I played drums as a high schooler, and so you throw them on a drum set or get a box, and then you have somebody that plays a little bit of guitar. So you gradually add and build up your people based on who is there with you. My approach as I organize the music ministry for me is I tend to do more singing and less talking. To let the songs do the talking because I'm not the greatest with extemporaneous speech, and I don't want to say anything that's going to detract from the message. So I just sing it. Like this. Someone took a lot of time to put something together. I don't need to add anything else. And then I use musical transitions. I don't do spoken verbal transitions. I also don't introduce too many songs at one time. People worship best with what they know. So you have to make sure you do songs that they know. When I do a new song, I do it 3 weeks in a row. You add I try to add no more than one a month, and it's not usually that much. And I focus on leading the congregation to praise God, not necessarily trying to impress the congregation with a concert. So I don't normally utilize a special during a Sunday morning service, because for me that kind of gets the eyes somewhere different. You have a different view. That's perfectly fine. That's just how I do it. I also, in presenting and putting the music together, I don't like to use lead solos because it seems confusing. It seems like a concert level. Am I supposed to listen? Am I supposed to sing? Am I supposed to clap? The goal in congregational music is to get your folks to sing and worship God. And if it's a concert setting, then they're just going to sit back and listen, and that takes them out as makes them spectators instead of participants. The other thing I like to make sure of is that I, as a leader, even though I love singing harmony, I try to make sure almost always I sing the melody so that people know what they're supposed to sing, because I'm leading them in that. And then I have some other singers on stage. If God blesses you with additional people, try to get them on stage with you and get them singing some harmony parts, which that just adds vocally to the picture. And then as I approach music ministry, I like to utilize holidays. If you need to introduce any sort of small changes, maybe God leads you and your pastor to think maybe we need to do X, Y, or Z. Utilize holidays to make those small changes. The special Christmas service, a special at Easter time. You can use video calls to worship occasionally, sprinkled in things. If you have something out of the ordinary service, an out of the ordinary element to that service will be well received. And then you just do that a few times, and then you start adding that in more, and before you know it, everyone's accepting of that thing. Whereas if I come in and make 6 brand new changes next week, it's going to be less well received normally. And then what I love about small churches is that I like to celebrate special occasions, and you can use music to do that. And small churches tend to do that well, more so than larger churches that I've been in just comparing. Like at Christmas time, you can have special Christmas traditions like an Advent wreath, a Christmas pageant. Here at FaithBridge, maybe it's the New England thing, but they have palm branches, and the kids wave them and coming in on the first song as a parade. Everyone, little things that everyone looks forward to. And anytime, another thing I like to do in my approach to music ministry, anytime I can use children on stage is an excellent use of, number one, you're helping kids learn that they're participants in the church and not just other. And the amount of people that will come to the building and watch their child wave a palm branch or be on stage wearing sheep ears, picking their nose on stage, there are going to be people that'll never have been in church before ever that will be there to hear that, and God will use that to help them learn about who He is, and they'll hear the gospel for the first time. So that's how I approach ministry.
Yeah, so you think about getting the congregation involved. I know they've done studies. If you want your church to sing, especially if you want kids to sing, then men need to be able to sing. And you listen to any Christian radio or stream, most Christian music is a little high for the average guy. I know when I'm driving my kids to school in the morning, I'll hit my falsetto singing the Phil Wickham, and they laugh at me and say, "Dad, stop." So kind of thinking of that, what are some basics of music theory that help make a song singable for a congregation, and kind of a crash course, if you will, because there's theory behind music. It's not just singing songs. There's a foundation of theory to it that actually impacts how we execute and perform music. So what do you think are some important things for people to know as they lead congregations?
Yeah, well, there's so much with music theory. Like I started taking piano lessons when I was 7 and studying music theory all the way through college. So there's a lot that you can do. But the very basic is the song range, is to know, like, if Phil Wickham or Chris Tomlin sings it, then you're going to have to lower it for the rest of the mortals in the world to be able to sing it. And because you want people to be able to sing and participate. So for those of you that know music, what I like to base it on, if you look at the notes of the song, I don't like to go much lower than a lower A to a high D. That's a D above middle C if you're looking at a piano keyboard. Sometimes an E. If you're not familiar with a piano, music is laid out and there's 7 notes and the scale is 8 C to C, if you will, and maybe like 2 or 3 notes above that to low. And you can look at a song, and a lot of times when you're trying to pick the song, you can find out what its range is and just look for those letters on there. I can, on a future webinar, I can go into figuring out how teaching you, if you don't know, a very basic way of knowing how to read music, enough to get your pencil out and count the fence up and down and figure out what the song range is, because it's very important not to sing it too high or too low. But some other thing I do when I pick a song, you can sing through it yourself, and if you can't hit the notes, then chances are other people in your church can't either, unless you're a high tenor. And if you do that, then you already know that you sing high based on other people. But most men have a lower voice than that. So your Chris Tomlins and your Phil Wickham's have a higher voice, and the rest of us don't. So if your voice hurts when you're trying to sing something, if it makes you feel tired, lower that song a little bit. And that's why the songs are laid out in keys, like the key of A and the key of C. And music is laid out on the alphabet. It goes from A to G and it starts over again. So if it's like, if it says the song is in the key of E and it feels too high as you're singing it, then just go backwards. It would be E, D, C, B, A, and then it starts over again with G, and it goes like that. So it's a complete circle, but that you just drop it down just a little bit to know it, to see if you can sing it. There are resources online that you can, one of them I saw today, you can, I didn't write down the name of it, but just search, you can do a Google search for chord changers, and you can copy and paste your chord chart into the website and then use an arrow to lower it. It will lower it for you. If you subscribe to Song Select, you can select any key that you want, and that's just a matter of looking at it and see which one you're good in. If you don't know, try a few. Excuse me. Some other stuff to take note of to make your song. Some music theory notes for your song is your musicians. Some keys are more difficult for young guitarists or young pianists or keyboardists to play in. So take note of that. You might need to change that. And that's, songs are all laid out on keys, and then it's some keys are harder to do than others. The other thing you need to take care of to make sure your song is singable for your congregation is the syncopation. That's the rhythm of the song. It's what makes the song interesting. But some songs are too interesting for your average person. Think out through your congregation and think about, Sister Ethel in the corner. Can Sister Ethel sing it? Then it's probably good. If Sister Ethel would sit there and stare at you, then you may want to consider that. So think through who you've got. Will this work? And it's going to be different in every place.
Yeah, so think about that idea of song selection. How do you handle song selection? And there are tools out there that are helpful.
There's a lot of tools that are helpful online. It's just a matter of doing some searching. So step one in selecting songs, what I do is this: and if you haven't, hopefully you've done this as a church. If you haven't, get a listing of all the songs that you sing in your church. Make a spreadsheet. That way, when you go to pick songs in your church, you can look and see what it is. I've helped with some churches, and some of them have very detailed lists and keep track of how often they sing it. Other churches just have a ton of chord charts rammed in the corner on their desk. So compile a list of all your songs, separate your list into songs that you do on a regular basis, and then songs that maybe you do occasionally, like your holiday songs, or your Easter songs, your Christmas songs, or things that may have been around for like 15 years that are kind of good old favorites. and then maybe some that you don't do anymore, and put that on the third. I have 3 tabs open on my list like that. And then when I begin to choose a song, I look through the list, make a note of songs that I haven't done in about 4 to 5 weeks, and then I'll write those down. And then as you choose the song, one of the hard things is putting songs together. And some people will just pick songs that they like and throw it on there, and you're good. I like songs to kind of make sense, and I'll have a theme of some sort. It might be a theme based on what the pastor is preaching. Sometimes you can't always do that and sing songs that people know. So I'll pick a character quality like grace or faith or creation or holiness. There's a lot of different things you can do. And then you'll pick one song that you like, and then look at the final line of the song and find another song that matches that. Maybe you have 2 songs that are totally about holiness. That's really easy. Or maybe you have one that the last line goes into something about looking forward to Jesus coming back. Then you can have another song that talks all about Jesus coming back. So there's a lot. It's intricate in that way. The way I pick songs. And then when you add new songs, again, make sure you don't add new songs too often, and that you choose a song that fits your theology and your congregation, and then drop it in that list and add it there. Make sure you program it 3 weeks in a row is what I always do. I do it 3 weeks, and I take a week off, and then I bring it back. And you've got to teach your congregation the song. By the end of it, everyone knows the song and they like it, or you realize this song is not really working and you scrap the song, which I've had to do before. That's Rich is nodding.
Only once in 18 years do I remember one where the peasants revolted and said no more.
Yes. So I like to see how the songs fit together. I like to personally, there's many ways you can group songs in your service, but I like to group. We do at FaithBridge, we do 2 sets of songs. We do, and I have 2 each. So I have faster songs at the beginning because people are talking as they come in, and number 1, you try to get their attention. Number 2, it's good to start off on an upbeat because it's morning, and I don't want to put them to sleep. And so I kind of go from fast to slow in my service. So we do some faster songs, and then we have in the middle where anything else that needs to happen in the service, and then we have 2 slower songs before the sermon, and so that's how I set up my songs that way. As far as to what you can sources to look for songs, I've got some resources at the end we'll talk about. I like to use, well, when I'm looking for a brand new song, I'll look through music that I listen to see if there's anything that will fit. I'll look for the different groups that I know that sing. I love new hymns. There's a group called City of Light that I'll look at their songs. There's some Getty songs you can do. Lifeway Worship has got a lot of stuff out there. WorshipTogether.com has got a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things you can get that release songs, free songs, and you can look at and put on your computer and look at it to see if it's something that's going to work for you. I like to have a mixture of newer songs, of old favorites that is based on your congregation, what they just tend to like sing their head off with. I like to have some newer hymns, and I like to have some older hymns that people can recognize. Sometimes I have to rearrange those hymns, and that's fun to do. But there's also a lot of hymns that have been rearranged that you can find yourself without having to write your own melody.
Now, do you and Rich coordinate the sermon and all the music?
Matt would like us to more than we do, and because we don't as often, it's mainly me. I'm the problem. It's me, since we're talking about music. Yeah, when we do go through a series and have planned ahead well and able to send those things over, coordinate when we're kind of in between series or have some of those one-offs, the coordination is not quite as strong. But again, every church is different. Matt and I just been serving together so long that, yeah, he pretty much has free reign. I know some churches that's not the case, but having a good working relationship with ministry, other ministry leaders is key and crucial.
Very much so.
Somebody mentions songselect.com and praisecharts.com are both great and useful tools in determining vocal range of a song. So that might be.
They are. Song Select is amazing if you have the resources for it. Which is for the small church. Sometimes it's a difficult. There's an amount of money you have to pay for Song Select per month. But if you can afford it, it's definitely very useful. You can print out any key that you want. You can sit there and look at what the recommended keys are. Praise Charts has multiple keys. Not as many keys as Song Select does. Lifeway Worship has got a lot of stuff. I actually like that one when I pick new songs because if they've got it, I can buy like $1.50 for one piano part, and then I can buy a vocal part for like 54 cents, and I don't have to buy like 6 of them. I can buy exactly what I need.
Mm-hmm. And now say a word back, Matt, about, so at the beginning you were saying that like if you didn't like a phrase in a song, so what type of liberties do you have in changing that in a legal sense? What, because you
that's
alluded to that.
debatable.
Oh, it's debatable. Okay.
I don't change it too much, but I'm not above changing one phrase in a verse.
Okay.
If you have to rewrite a whole verse, it's between you and your interpretation of things. Yep. So it is that's yep. all I can say about that. I'm not going to tell you to break the law, but I definitely will change a song. I'll change the key. I'll drop bridges. You don't have to do the song exactly the way you hear it on the radio.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good answer.
So now we got our songs. What does I assume we're working on the assumption that your team should practice, and I will say I don't lead worship, I don't lead musicians, but I think everyone should practice. Yes, under that assumption that your team is practicing, what does practice look like on a week in, week out basis?
We practice once a week, actually twice. I practice with most of my people can be there on Friday, but I got a couple that work and can't, so I meet them on Sunday. But ideally, you have everybody at one practice because that's the absolute best scenario that you can. Although I can't sit there and tell you that that's the only way to do it because I have to break it up into two. But you walk through the worship set. And then I'll go through from beginning to end, and we will stop and fix any problems along the way. Problems such as listening to the instruments. Is everyone playing it correctly? Is anyone just totally killing a chord? Maybe they need to learn maybe they don't know what a chord is. And we're pretty good and open, and people will ask if they don't know. And then as you sit there, maybe you've done this beforehand, or maybe you're doing it as you're practicing it in practice, but think through how that you're shaping the song. At the very basic, you're just going to play the song from beginning to end, hope for the best, and go for it. But as God has gifted us as being creative individuals, songs sound better when they're not just blared loud start to finish, as loud as possible. You can do some things. Maybe you do the intro a little different. Maybe you start with, if you have somebody that plays the keyboard on a string button, you can start with strings and layer in a little bit. Maybe it's a upbeat song and you start with just the drums and the chorus. Think through what you think works best, and listen to some stuff on the radio to see like how they shape their music, because it's shaped in such a way to make it interesting to listen to. And you can take some of those things from that. Don't just play everything loud. Listen to the instruments, fix anything that you don't like. Not everyone has to play everything all the time. Maybe the guitar plays a little less at one part. Maybe it comes in really hard at one part. Think through as you listen to see, are there things that you can do? Maybe there is, maybe there's not. Make sure you stay on a good tempo. Make sure if you have a percussionist, make sure that they're not gradually slowing down to the point that your fast song becomes a lullaby. Also, We have this problem is to make sure it doesn't go so fast that your singers can't spit out the words. When we first got to FaithBridge, the drummer played everything too slow, and now sometimes it's like I'm trying to hold her back like a car running down the hill. So sometimes it's difficult. So listen to the tempo and ask yourself as you're doing it, is this a singable speed? Does it feel too slow? Does it feel too fast? Make if you're doing a new song, I like to email or text the singers so that they can listen to the song in advance. If I've got new players or people that are learning harmonies, like I've got a couple that like to practice. Practicing is good, by the way, if you can encourage your team to practice throughout the week instead of just coming in to practice and let her fly and hope for the best. I mean, that's one way to do it, but it'll work better if you prepare in advance. Is to send them the songs. You probably, hopefully, have picked the songs before practice. So email those songs to them in advance. Keep a PDF copy on your computer of everything that you've got so that you can easily send it out to people. And then during your practice, spend time with the vocalist listening to, is somebody flat? Do you need to fix the melody? Are there places that you can add harmony to, maybe on a chorus, unless you've got people that just can pick it out and go for it. And then it's just a matter of rating some of that in. If you're having to teach harmonies or help or gradually in there, start with one chorus and work just a little bit. Some of your songs that you get either on Song Select or Lifeway or Praise Charts have got multiple parts written in there, and you can just teach them. Because everybody's voice is different. You might have some people that have a lower voice that sounds great, but they can't sing real high. So the melody, they would not prefer the melody, but they can do something on a lower part that fits well. And it makes it sound better if you're able to do that. And then the other thing that I encourage of is I'm a firm believer in printed music. There are some people that like to have the band play everything without any music and have everything memorized. If you can get there, go for it. But I like the printed page. I like to be so familiar with my printed page that I don't have to use it and I can glance down at it. But when you use printed chord chart are the ones that just have words with the letters on top of them. Some other terminologies you'll see is lead sheet. That would be your pianist would use that. It's got the words with the guitar chords, but it also has the melody for the right hand in it. Or you've got a straight up piano part for both hands. Whatever works for your people and you've got access to. Print them off, and then they can make notes on it. Right here, I need to play softer. Right here, I need to speed up. Right here, I need to do this. And then you make the notes on that. Maybe this song feels really good to repeat the bridge a couple times. Maybe this song over here, I'm gonna start with the chorus and then go in there. You make the notes, and then the next time you do the song, you've got all the notes, and so you don't have to rethink through how you play a song, and it makes it easier. And then to make the other thing is to make the best sound that your group is capable of. You can't strive for improvement, just have a starting place and make a goal throughout the year. By the end of the year, we're going to be doing harmonies, or by the end of the year, I want to try to be able to play my instrument better, whatever that is. But make the best sound that you can, but make your sound. Work with the instruments that you've got. We've got people that play ukulele, so we have ukuleles on stage. Not everybody has a ukulele, so we have an organ in the middle of our stage. So sometimes we do organ with the ukulele and the electric guitar, which is a fun mixture that you don't hear very often. But it's what is there. So like work with who you've got, work with what you've got, and take steps to grow from it. And realize that you don't have to play the song exactly like it is on the radio. If you can, that's great, but you don't have to. You can rearrange it and give your people freedom to do what they're capable of.
Yeah. So how do you strike that balance? Because sometimes it'd be a temptation in a small church. Try to phrase this as graciously as I can, but I probably won't. Sometimes in a small church you can pride yourself on doing things poorly, we're just making a joyful noise to the Lord, and it is honestly noise. So there's that extreme, and then there's the other extreme. Like if my praise team can't win a Dove Award, then we're not honoring God. So how do you decide when enough is enough?
There's the verses about decently and in order. There's the verses about praising. Like if I'm praising somebody, I'm not going to blast them the most awful that I can. I'm going to try to do the best job that I can. And so that's how I approach stuff: is do the best job that you're capable of, but make it the best job that you're capable of, not the best job that, oh, we've got to sound like the song is on Caleb, and if we don't do that, then nobody can do anything. Well, then you just got to play radio notes. So don't obsess over it. Just have a starting place. You want to get through the song. You want to be able to get through the song without stopping. You want your people to sing on key as best as they can. If you've got somebody that is really desperate or learning and they have some difficulties, maybe they're learning an instrument, you can turn them down a little bit so that they're playing something, but they're not like, they don't have to be the loudest thing on stage. And you can, and then strive to have them improve. Like during your free time during the week, we've got so much free time as Americans. Take some of that free time that you have, maybe play less Candy Crush and spend some time working on whatever it is that you do, whether that's your instrument or whether that's your voice. We have one guy that wanted to help out in church in the sound booth, so he went and signed up and took a class on how to run the sound on his own. So if you've got the funds to help someone do that, that's great. If you've got some people that are interested in doing that, maybe they need to take a classes. There's tons of YouTube videos. So just have people like work at getting better like they would at anything else. If you're on a sports team, you're not gonna, just only show up for the game and never go to the practices at all. So
we're trying to stay away from the tech side tonight, but he did mention something, that idea that when you have new vocalists and new musicians, the soundboard does have faders, and as they grow in skills and abilities, their prominence in the mix can grow as well. And because there is that idea that you need to be on stage to get better, but you also need to be better to be on stage. And so that's how we've kind of handled it at FaithBridge. Each church might do a little bit different, but that's a way to help grow people in their skills and ability and stage presence, if you will. Not that it's a performance, but being gracious to the rest of the congregation as well.
And it's a great way. Again, the beauty of small church is that the involvement of children and teens, music, technology is a great way to utilize children and teens as part of your church. Don't not let someone do something because they haven't graduated high school yet. You also don't want to have only elementary students on your stage. That might, unless that's what your pastor with 10 kids and they all play an instrument, and go for it. So I mean, let them sit. If you got someone that's new that wants to join you, I let them sit in on the rehearsal, sing along with us. Sometimes I'll have somebody sit in on the rehearsal with their instrument, and maybe they're going to just play it for the instrument. My daughter started playing the ukulele that way, and when she felt like she could do it and keep up and not keep messing up, then she started doing it on Sunday. We have our said aforementioned sound guy. Also, we lost our bass player, so he started to learn the bass on his own. Then when he got comfortable enough, he started putting himself on stage, but he would personally turn himself almost completely out, and he's gradually turned himself up. So there are different ways you can do that. Children and teens are a great way to look. And you may already do this as a small church, or you may not have thought of that yet. Maybe so. Look around your church and see who's there. Is someone taking lessons? Is someone gifted that way as a child or as a teen? Or maybe they just like video games, and you need some help running your lyrics computer or if you're live streaming, they can probably do a better job than some of your other people are doing. So.
Somebody asks, where can you find classes for folks to learn sound booth skills? Do you have any recommendations?
The place my wife teaches at here in Manchester, they offer sound booth skills at that class. It's more on the recording side. So some of your music schools, I would say, do a search online. There are some online resources. There are worship leader. I've listened to several worship leader podcasts. There are some that have learn how to run the soundboard, learn how to do this. There's a ton of resources out there if you just go look for it. But if you're better like in person than you are watching a screen to do that, check some of there are a lot of local music schools that I know some of them have those things.
Yeah, and then especially on that tech side, YouTube is a great way to learn pretty much anything anymore. So Google intro to whatever brand and model your soundboard is, and someone out there has done an intro video on it.
Yes.
And a ton of churches use a particular soundboard, and there's hundreds of hours of content on running particular aspects of sound, and that's an area where you can grow, because you can, as Matt talked about, shaping music. On the performance end, there's a lot you can do to shape music on the production side of things that aids in congregational singing. So particular rooms have really resonant frequencies, and when you're able to shape those out, certain vocalists that might not have as much training or experience as others have some irritating frequencies that you're able to shape out on the back end of things. And so not only does it help grow in their skills and abilities as they work to hit all the notes cleanly and clearly, it is gracious to the congregation that they're not wincing, sometimes crying in tears from those off notes. So yeah, YouTube, or your local music store that offers lessons. I know some of us are a little more rural locations that might not be an option for those of us closer to civilization. Check with your local music school and ask them if they have anyone that they have any production classes or sound classes. So as we go on, kind of starting to land the plane. So if you do have any questions, make sure you throw those in the chat there. But as you think about small church, and you've worked in a lot of different churches, even though you've been here for 18 years, what are some common areas of growth you see a lot of times in music ministries at church? Some common mistakes, if you will.
On my page. Common mistakes that I find churches make. One I mentioned already is that using songs that really the theology doesn't match your church. To me, that's one of the most glaring. Because what you sing is important. What you say is important. You wouldn't, just like you take great pains to shape your sermon, or to even choose what version of the Bible that you teach out of to say the best thing. You wouldn't just pick up any random thing and start reading or preaching your text from it. So pay attention to your song and what it says, and make sure it matches what you teach. And you can't blanket say, you could just blanket say, I won't do any song by X artist. Or the better thing to do is if you find something and look at it and say, is this song good? Is this song worthy? Because there are some that are really good, and there are other ones that just don't work. Another one is only doing songs that are popular on the radio. Like, there's so much other stuff that's not there. You don't have to do the top 30. But also the other side is to never doing anything that's on there. There's two, you like to talk about the extremes, one or the other. There's somewhere in the middle is the best. Another mistake I've seen is doing too many new songs at the same time. So a new person comes in, or you go to a conference, or you hear something on the radio, and then all of a sudden, like everything in your worship set is brand new. Musicians were creative. We like to make sure we do things new, and we get sometimes annoyed at things that we've been doing for a while. But people love to worship with what they know. If you do too many new songs, people aren't going to know it, and they're not going to be able to sing it with you. So you'll end up with people sitting there staring at you, or you'll start to get in fun little comments by email or letter. Either you or the pastor does. So don't do too many brand new songs at once. Like we talked already, choosing songs that are just simply too high or too low. Never have I. Usually, you don't hear a song that's too low. It's usually almost always too high. One of my personal pet peeves, so this is just a personal issue, is how you pray in church. I don't care for transitional prayers where I'm leading one song and then I want to tell the congregation something, but I'm going to put "Dear Lord" on the front of it and "Amen" at the end of it, and then tell you everything I want to know. If you really feel led to say something to people, then say it. Or if you feel led that this is the time that needs to pray, do the prayer, but do the prayer as a prayer to God, not just a way to walk myself from one to the other. So pay attention to that, because prayer is important. You're talking to an almighty God. Don't use it as a tool for other things. And that's also personal and subjective. What works? What would talk? If you're not sure what's going on with that, great resources to talk with your pastor, and he'll help you understand that or come to a good agreement with what works for your church. Another thing I see is you try desperately to be a cover band. Embrace the uniqueness that is your group. Don't try to do everything exactly the same way, because you're not going to be able to. You're a small church. We've got people from age 70 to 14 on our stage at one time. And so those people aren't going to be able to do stuff the way Elevation does. And you shouldn't try to do it. Plus, they've got a ton of tracks playing behind them and a click track and all this other stuff that makes more technology, that makes it difficult. And if one little thing goes wrong, then it comes crashing down. Just you might have a classical pianist and a guitar player. Then make the best sound that you can with your people that you have, and then you can have something where you can get through the song and you're playing all the right chords and you're making joyful noise. And then as you grow, you can shape your stuff. And as you build your group of songs and you keep doing stuff, and you realize, oh, I played this song 25 times already. Maybe I can do it a little differently here, and it's not brand new. So shape your stuff.
Yeah, and as you're thinking, I mean, as churches change, your music ministries all change over the years. People come, people go. Musicians come, musicians go, for good and for bad reasons. And so not always holding on to the glory days, whatever that was, but using what you have, not what you wish you had or what you did have, but serving God with who is there, with an eye of disciple making, an eye to growing. So along that line of growing and also working through, musicians have a reputation, for good or bad, for being a little temperamental sometimes. Not that I've ever personally seen that amongst our musicians here at FaithBridge. I mean, we've never had issues with that ever, at least today. So how do you find musicians? And then on the back end, have you ever had to fire a musician or a volunteer?
I don't know if I've ever had to fire someone, to my knowledge. I don't think I have. Maybe I have, and I can't remember.
We've had a few serve suspended sentences.
Yes.
And that was not so much for their musical ability, but they are on stage. They are a prominent face of the church. And so if there's a significant sin issue that is prominent in causing unity, someone had some time off. But also we've had seasons of restoration. So those folks that were kind of on the shelf for a bit were able to be restored. Yeah. So how do you find them?
Finding them is that you're always looking. We are always looking. And so I went to the Simply Worship conference a couple of years ago, and then listening to some podcasts is ask everybody you see, and have everybody on your group asking people, or just put your feelers out there and listen. Maybe you're in your conversation, it comes up. So ask everybody, hey, do you do anything? Do you sing? Do you play anything? Sometimes they don't want to be on stage at all, or sometimes they just don't think that they're good enough. Again, like I already mentioned, look at your children and your teens. Often it's an untapped resource in your church. One thing that is for me, what I've always found is the most difficult is the percussion area. New music, it's difficult to do without percussion. It's difficult to do it fast enough or to have the right sound with it. Oftentimes it'll just start getting slower. That's our problem because our stage is so wide. And so if you have somebody that plays drums, that's awesome. If you have nobody that plays drums, then the second best thing for that is it's a box called a cajon. I should have brought one in here. A lot of you probably know it. I know Nashville Baptist uses one. We have one on stage along with our drummer. And it's a simple wooden box that's got some snare strings. I don't know what they're called, but there's some snare strips on the inside of it that, depending on where you hit it, it have a bass sound kind of lower in the middle, and then you have more of a rim shot sound kind of to the side. You can do a lot of interesting things, and it just requires you to be able to have rhythm. And most likely, you've got somebody in your group that can have rhythm by just beating on something. And so, look for those people, buy a cajon, and maybe send it home with them, and they can practice. The great thing about a cajon is it's super duper portable. So if you're church in a box, the cajon is a lot easier to move around than a kit. So that's how I find musicians. Some other stuff you can do is if you got any colleges nearby, you can put out word for that. We don't have a lot of colleges in Manchester or our region. We've got some, but not a whole lot of music programs.
So they don't have to go to church?
It's a great one to ask your pastor on. Sometimes you can get somebody that if you really need something, you got somebody that's coming along. It can be a discipleship moment or not. It really depends on what that looks like and what your church's philosophy is. I've seen both. So all of our people have always gone to FaithBridge, and I've known where they're at. But like, say you need someone in your sound booth, if you got someone local, it would be a great way for them to come and hear the gospel. So it's something that's a philosophy decision on your church's part, but that's one way you can use that.
So any resources that we haven't kind of talked through yet that would be key or helpful as people serve in their music ministries?
I put up a couple books that looked really, really good. I like them. I like the authors of them both. One is called Corporate Worship, How the Church Gathers as God's People, written by a guy named Matt Mercer. The other one is Doxology and Theology, How the Gospel Forms the Worship Leader. Those are both from the leadership point of view. Matt Boswell is at Southern Seminary. He's written several songs, new hymns that are wonderful. Does writes along with the Gettys. And there's just some neat stuff in there. There's some websites and some podcasts that you can listen to based on that. City of Light is a new group that I listen to. They write new songs. They're actually a conservative Episcopal church out of Australia, which it was weird to me when I was looking at that. But they write some really neat songs. Lifeway Worship has a lot of stuff on there. And it's affordable. You can actually, what I like about Lifeway Worship is that this is not a paid advertisement for them, but you can click and preview the entire song of everything. You can see what it looks like from start to finish. You're not supposed to print it. It's got copyright all over it, which I don't, that you'd be stealing if you did that. You don't need to do that. But you can look and see like everything in advance and see if it's going to work, see where the high part is. or see if the song is going to work. They can listen to most of them there. If you see a song somewhere that you like, you can listen to it on, I mean, everyone knows this already, but you can go to YouTube and listen to anything just to see and preview the song, to see what you like there. There are other websites. Worshiptogether.com has got a lot of things. They actually have search features by category. If you want songs on the blood or songs on holiness or songs that deal with whatever, they've got not just their songs, but like a lot of different songs. That Worship Together is from the Passion conferences. So there's other stuff. There's a conference that is local that hopefully you know of. There's some Southern BCNE folks that help lead things at this conference. It's called Simply Worship, and she's got the events there. And I'm going to go to that this year. It's affordable. It's local. It's led by local people. They always bring in a big name speaker that people have heard of before, but the breakouts are what make it really, really useful, because there's a lot of really useful stuff in the breakouts that you can do, and there's always a ton of them you can go with.
Is that a conference you'd recommend taking a group to?
I would.
If you're able to.
If you can take a group to it. The price is not too bad, and it's definitely not just for the worship leader. But, your singers can go, your bass player can go, your sound booth people. They have lighting tracks. We have a light switch that turns on and off, so I don't need a lighting track for that. But there's all sorts of stuff. There's things that small churches can glean from that. You don't just have to have a big church with a big budget.
Well, as we wrap up, if there's any last questions, probably the most important question people have been wondering all evening is it sloppy wet or unforeseen?
That was definitely unforeseen.
Yeah, I would agree with you there on that one. So Sandy, if there's last minute questions, otherwise we'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, so one last question. Somebody has asked, any idea of a source for musical students looking for church internships? Perhaps for degree completion requirements?
Matt might have an answer, but if they're connected through the Baptist Churches of New England, I would definitely connect with your regional coordinator or your director of missions, depending on what region of New England you are at. And they would probably be the first step. They would probably know some churches that would be able to help accommodate that need. And talk to the pastor of your home church, even if you're away from your home church because you're at school. They might have some connections or resources. But if you're in New England, check with your regional coordinator or your director of missions, and I think they'd be able to help point you in the right direction. Matt, do you have anything?
That's what I would say, is check your, because there's got to be, most likely there's a new church or a struggling small church that would love to have somebody come in and help work with. It just depends on how far you want to travel for that.
Yeah, another resource too might be if you want to advertise that you're looking for somebody. We have a church BCNE multiplication page, and so that would certainly be another resource that we can share, outside of the regional coordinators, just because we do have people. I think in most of our churches are on that page, so that might be a resource too. And of course, we do have the Northeast Baptist College. I don't know what, if there's any music in there, but even local music schools, as you've already said. So check those out as well.